My name is Chidi Oguamanam from the Law School at University of Ottawa and the Open African Innovation Research Project. It's such a privilege to talk about the future of Africa and to reflect on the way forward. Africa is a continent of 55 countries and thousands of nationalities, and its incredible human diversity and cultural diversity corresponds with significant ecological and agro-diversity. Africa, as you have heard already, is the youngest and fastest growing continent. By the year 2050, 1/4 of the whole world at 2.5 million or 2.5 billion would be residents of Africa. Nigeria, Africa's most populous country, would be the world's third largest. So, it is incredible to think about such a continent having 70% of its people below the age of 30. Therefore, Africa's future is at the intersection of strength and a ticking time bomb. In a way, the future of Africa lies in the continent's ability to capitalize on its own strengths and to exploit its latecomer advantage in development. And I want to touch on two aspects of Africa's strengths and their intersections. And that is the obvious one, the youth power, technology, and traditional knowledge in the context of agriculture, just as we have heard now. The starting point is that for Africa to be at peace, the continent must be able to feed itself. And most of us who are familiar with riots and revolutions, including the Arab Spring, would know that a hungry population is an angry population. But for most of the times, Africa has been cast in the image of a desperate continent in need of what they call capacity building and capacity development. And this is also the way they talk about indigenous peoples. Little attention is paid at all in relation to what we should learn from Africa. And more often than not, it's cut and paste orthodox solutions that are prescribed for the continent. For example, we are told that mechanized agriculture is the solution to Africa's food crisis. And therefore, the whole continent now is on the race to the bottom, trying to introduce genetically modified organisms. And these are actually driven by proprietary seed holders from outside of Africa, pushing away our farmers from traditional agricultural practices. That, for us, is a wrong way. That pathway would not make Africa to feed itself. But those uncritical advocates of capacity building and capacity development are themselves actually in need of inward capacity development to really understand the critical realities of Africa. And that is the kind of research we do in the Open African Innovation Research Project. And let's talk about it a little bit. High-tech agriculture has troubling legacies. And those legacies are not what we want to be replicated in Africa. As we speak, 24 billion tons of healthy soil and 15 million trees are lost yearly. From the early 20th century, we have lost 75% of plant genetic resources for food and agriculture. And we rely on only 3 major crops for the calories we consume. And those seeds are now into the hands of only 3 major agricultural corporations. None of them is resident in Africa. And we don't want that kind of tragedy to be replicated on this continent if it was to feed itself. Africa's case is radically different. At 874 million hectares, this continent has 62% of the world's fertile agricultural land. And there are 600 million Africans engaged in farming. And guess what? 80% of them are women in the rural areas. They are called smallholder farmers. They are the drivers of informal economy in Africa, a civilization that has invested and invented the internet, the aeroplane, does not have a solution as to how to integrate this critical population into the knowledge economy. So for Africa, what we have seen already is the race to the bottom of foreign direct investment, a radical displacement of the weak people that drive the agriculture in this economy. So, research and development priorities regarding agriculture, just like they've done in medicine, spending so much money, investing for medicines for the rich and not for the poor. The same is about to be replicated in agriculture. And therefore, from Côte d'Ivoire to Cameroon, from Liberia to Ethiopia, what you have seen is radical land grab and the displacement of African youths. All they can get in this deal is just a walkie-talkie, protecting the vast land that has displaced their ancestors. And therefore, my point is that Africa must capitalize on its factor endowment, and specifically traditional knowledge-driven agriculture. For Africa, there is a culture in agriculture, and that culture is our way of life. It is not just a production line. It is a community process, and we are completely invested in it from generation to generation. And the challenge we have going to the future is to model agriculture through selective interfacing of new information communication technologies for global market optimization of our niche added. It's about time Africa stopped being screwed by global value chain. So instead of desperate foreign direct investments, Africa should look into internal self-sustaining investment in its area of factor endowment. It may seem late, but it is still possible to make Africa to be the future of sustainable agriculture. Thank you.